What's up, guys? So I want to start a new segment where I take you inside my own training log. So each week I'll share the tweaks and adjustments that I make to my program, whether that's switching up technique, using different pieces of equipment, adjusting my setup and positioning, or even just swapping in a new movement altogether. The idea is to give you a look at how I problem solve in real time, how I experiment and make changes on the fly, and troubleshoot when something isn't working. My goal is that by teaching you how I approach my own training, you'll pick up some ideas that maybe you can apply to yours. So for today's segment, I want to break down an issue that I ran into during my tricep pushdowns. On one of my working sets, I started to feel some slight discomfort in my right elbow, and right away I realized what was happening. It came down to something called neuromuscular bias. Simply put, when both your feet are flat on the ground, your body's more stable, but it also tends to default to its dominant side. In my case, my right side was taking slightly more of the load. That created an uneven torque at the elbow joint, which shifted stress away from the triceps and into the tendon and joint structures themselves. Now, the thing about neuromuscular bias is that it can show up whether you're fresh or fatigued, but fatigue makes it harder for your nervous system to correct those imbalances. And since my stabilizers and prime movers, being my pecs and my shoulders, were already fatigued, my body was more likely to fall back at its dominant side. Now, if I had trained triceps earlier in the session, which I would never normally do on a push day, but let's just say I had, that would mean that my nervous system was fresh and my pressing muscles haven't accumulated any volume yet. So in that scenario, I'd have more bandwidth to keep things more balanced. Now, that doesn't mean that the bias would have been removed completely, but it does mean that it would have been far less noticeable. But in this session, by the time I got to my pushdowns, I've already done 15 total working sets for chest and shoulders combined. So at that point, not only were my stabilizers fatigued, but my triceps has already been worked in directly. And that set the stage for neuromuscular bias to really show up. So the way I solved this was simply by changing my stance. So instead of keeping both feet planted flat, I stacked one foot on top of the other. And by reducing my base of support, I took away some of that extra stability my body was leaning on to favor my dominant side. So with a narrower base, I forced myself to stay more centered and balanced. What that did was even out the load distribution through both arms. So instead of my right side trying to dominate, both triceps shared the work more evenly. So the tension went straight back into the muscle where it wanted, and the pressure in the elbow joint was gone. So I hope this helps someone out there who's ever ran into the same problem in their training. And if you ever find yourself in this position, I encourage you to try this technique out. Pay attention to how your body responds, and don't be afraid to experiment with small adjustments. Sometimes that's all it takes to turn discomfort into better muscle activation.